Hey, good evening, everyone. Tonight, the night of the great pink supermoon, I have a special selection in mind, but I was also reminded that it's Passover. I know Easter's coming up, Easter Sunday is coming up, but it's Passover, and Passover is a night for families, and a lot of my friends can't be with their family because of the pandemic. So I was also thinking that it's very appropriate to talk about Passover tonight because all of us, one way or another, no matter what religion we are, even those of us who don't have a religion and don't have any belief systems at all in that way, are waiting for the shadow to pass over. And while the days of putting lamb's blood around the door are gone, hand sanitizer seems to be doing the job right now. And I was thinking about this song, and I know that it's a reading, but hey, folks, we can do anything we want. It's the new normal. Hey, Nancy. So this one always made me think of my father's religion, which was Jewish. So it was a Sabbath prayer. May the Lord protect and defend you. May he always shield you from shame. May you come to be in Israel a shining name. May you be like Ruth and like Esther. May you be deserving of praise. Strengthen them, O Lord, and keep them from the stranger's ways. May God bless and grant you long lives. May God make you good mothers and wives. May the Lord protect and defend you. May the Lord preserve you from pain. Favor them, O Lord, with happiness and peace. Oh, hear our Sabbath prayer. Amen. And if you can do that on the amount of lung capacity I've got tonight, forget about the pitch problems. So tonight's first story is New Moon, especially for those of us who are looking at the moon tonight. Every night, Bella Wolf sneaked out of the family den in the little cave and went outside. There he made a careful climb up the steep hill to the rocky cliff so that he could talk to Moon. Some nights it was a very short conversation, just a few yips, since the moon was just a sliver in the sky of the night. Other times there was really no talk at all because the great white ball had turned its face completely away. But tonight, Bella expected a very long talk since Moon was full, huge, and very close. How are you? Asked Bella in a long, wailing voice. He had to tilt his head way back and point his snout all the way towards the sky and cry out very loud in order to be heard by the moon. Moon was silent for a moment and then answered in a series of blinks and winks of its craters. For over the years, the wolves had developed a sort of a code for communicating with the moon and the stars. The wolves would howl out and the moon and the stars would wink and blink and twinkle in answer. Same as always, the moon answered. I am lonely. Only once or twice has anyone even visited me. First a cow jumped over me just to say hello. Then a few humans came to stick flags in me and poke at me and jump out. But since then, it's been pretty dull and quiet. Bella frowned. Really wasn't like Moon to sulk or be sad. Quiet, yes. Absent, sometimes. But Moon was never really in a bad way. Well, I am here for you, Bella howled. Millions of creatures all around the world look up to you. You're a light in the darkness. That's kind of a wonderful thing to be, don't you think? Moon glared down at him. They're always more interested in the sun. No one really cares for me. But I'm going to show them. Just you wait until tomorrow. Bella howled and howled, but Moon would not answer. Its face was blank. And Bella began to worry. What was happening? Why was the moon so angry? The problem was that the moon had spent a great deal of time lately communicating with a black hole in another galaxy. This mysterious starless patch of sky had begun sending signals to Moon, and those signals changed the way Moon looked at the world. You are not getting enough attention, the darkness hissed. Everyone takes you for granted. You must show them that you are not to be ignored. You must show them your power. At first, Moon argued against this, but as time wore on, the dark space talked and talked, and Moon began to believe. Moon began to feel isolated and hurt. Everyone loves the sun, said the dark space. That's all anybody ever talks about. You can hear the planet's electric broadcasts up here in space, and all they care about is the weather. All they ever say, partly sunny, mix of sun and clouds. They never mention your name. Never is it partly moony. You notice this? That's what I notice. Moon began to listen to these broadcasts and to notice that the black hole was telling the truth. How could the moon have missed it all of these years? What an insult! As the day dawned across parts of the earth, Moon looked down and scowled. The signal hissed from the dark reaches of space. Look how happy they are to see the sunrise. You should teach them all a lesson. The black hole sent a message with a bold and terrible plan. Block out the sun, said the moon. Show them all that the power of the night is more important than that of the day. Yeah, that will put them all at your mercy. Moon was so angry and hurt that it didn't consider the consequences of its actions. It acted out of anger. And when it came time to pass the sun, it made a quick shift in its orbit and slid neatly between the sun and the earth. The planet was now plunged into darkness. Every creature stopped in its tracks and looked up at what was now a black dot in the darkened sky. Then the new darkness caused complete panic. Some ran and hid, others cried and ran around shouting that it was the end of the world, and it was chaos. For a full day and a night and on into the next day, Moon took great pains to block the light of the sun from every possible path to the earth. No matter how hard the sun tried to reach the earth, the moon would shift and spin and create a shadow. Moon took the signal of the black hole. It was laughing with delight, but the moon wasn't laughing. Once the initial thrill had worn off, Moon looked down and saw the fear that it created. It saw the creatures were being injured by stumbling around in the blackness, and it heard the small, weak cries for help in the darkness of the confused. People were being trampled. And then the moon heard the howl of Bella. Moon! Moon! How could you do this? Bella yelled. This is no way to get attention. Causing pain and destruction is not going to bring you respect or love. Moon suddenly realized it couldn't answer back because it needed the reflection of the sun on its face for Bella to see its signal. Moon turned its back on the sun, so Moon's face was now black as night itself. Think of all the stories written about you for children to be heard at bedtime, Bella howled. Remember the songs? Beautiful music written about you? Think of the people who fall in love while looking up at you. See all the ships that found their way home at night because your light alone was there to guide them? Those are really good and powerful things. Moon tried to ignore what it saw and heard. It didn't want to be so wrong. It tried to tune in to what the black hole was saying. You have the power now. You rule the earth and the sun. Good job. rule? Moon tried to think. Was that what it wanted? No. Moon had wanted to feel loved. Moon tuned out Black Hole and listened to Bella's message. Remembering all that Bella had said, Moon was moved, and so it stepped aside and let the sun have its place once again. And the light covered the planet below, and all the creatures began to come out and to come to their senses again. When the day reached its natural ending time, Moon came out slowly. It was very embarrassed about what it had done to everyone. Moon was also very sad. In fact, it had turned a shade of pale blue that no one had ever seen before. Everyone was surprised by the strange color and hue of the face of the moon, yet a great cheer came up from the earth and all of its inhabitants because they were very happy to have that moon back in its proper place. Moon blinked with surprise. Then it signaled to Bella, "Have they forgiven me so quickly?" Moon, Bella howled back up. "We can forgive a mistake, but please try not to make a habit of what you did today. Look, let us make the blue moon something that we don't see too often." So it was that the moon promised never again to stay so long in front of the sun. Only once in a great while would it make a brief shadow there as a reminder of how valuable seeing the light can be. Breathing. All right, this one's for my buddy, Joe Filipowski. Joe at the Tidewater Wooden Boat Workshop, who works with so many kids and does so many amazing things. And they're shut down right now, and I know a lot of kids are going to be very, very happy to get back to them. So Joe and everybody at Wooden Boat Workshop, this is for you. It's called The Ship of Dreams. In a large town by the seaside, two woodworkers sat side by side in a large workshop. Each was making a plan to build a great and glorious boat, one like no other. Their names were Stone and Thomas. They had worked side by side for many years on many projects. Year after year, Thomas quietly went about his work while his partner criticized him. "Your work just isn't interesting enough," Stone would say. "It's too simple. It needs to be more fancy. It needs to be bigger, attract more attention, command a higher price, like mine." Stone added, "If you think you're ever going to be a big success doing that kind of work, you're just a dreamer." Thomas didn't put too much of his time into making things expensive or fancy. He believed that something simple could be beautiful and valuable. Good grief. "You make the same wooden bowl and goblets every time someone places an order," Stone complained. "How very boring. People want each one to be unique." Thomas held up one of his exquisitely crafted wooden bowls. The grain showed through the smooth finish. Each was a work of art. "I think people come to me because they see one of these and they want one exactly like it. If I change the shape or the feel, people would be disappointed. If they want something fancy, well, they can just go to you." Stone wrinkled his nose and grumbled, "Those aren't even worthy to feed those stupid little mice you keep here in the shop." "Maybe that's it, right? Thomas, you're trying to become as poor as one of your little mice?" Thomas was kind-hearted. He'd saved the mice from being eaten by Stone's cat. He kept them in a little wooden cage that he'd made to look like better company than some people I could name, Thomas said. "And they're pretty smart, too." Sorry, keep getting a phone call, believe it or not. They can learn just about anything. Stone shook his head and huffed, "Bah!" So the argument went, day after day, year after year, with Stone adding, "I'm only trying to teach you how to get ahead in this world." Finally, the two agreed to try building something different, something neither had ever tried to create. They settled on a wooden boat. But Stone would only be happy with a great ship, while Thomas had other plans. They argued over the sort of boat to build. They argued so hard and so long that finally Stone issued a challenge. "I'll wager that I can make a better craft than you can." He shouted at Thomas, "I'm going to build a ship that will live long after I do. A ship people will write songs about. A ship that will be a legend." Thomas had always been the most humble of the two men. He didn't really want a contest at all, but he knew that Stone was never going to be satisfied without them. He was not interested in legends or songs. He only wished to do the very best that he could do and create a ship that he could be proud of. Still, Stone's boasting so loudly, insulting Thomas's work, got him to thinking. "Okay, I accept your challenge," Thomas said. He put on a very serious expression. He paced slowly back and forth across the workshop floor, causing little tan clouds of dust to float up around his feet. Stone blinked. It really, really wasn't like Thomas. To take such a large task so quickly. He thought this was a sure sign that Thomas was making a huge mistake. Thinking this, he made a very large wager. "You can't accept until you've heard what the prize is going to be," Stone cried. "If I win, that you have to give me all of your tools to use for a whole year. Also, you have to make only fancy pieces in your shop, pieces exactly like I command." Thomas considered for a moment and then said, "That's fine, but what if I win?" Thomas considered for a moment. Stone chuckled. "Name your prize." Thomas eyed the cage on the shelf and he said, "You have to be humble as a mouse for an entire year. No boasting, no bragging. Your work has to be simple and reasonably priced." Being so sure of himself, Stone accepted the bet. Stone took a large amount of his savings and he went out to buy a ton of the finest wood. He hired assistants and built a huge workshop in which to house the ship while it was being built. Thomas packed his few belongings, a small tent, some supplies, and his mice. He set out on a quest to a far-off forest where he heard of some very special balsa wood trees growing. When he reached the forest, he chose a fine, straight tree and cut it down. He used his tools and he carried to strip off the bark and mill the wood into small pieces. Thomas took all the pieces and set to work. A year passed and Thomas had finished his creation, as had Stone. Thomas returned to the town by the seaside. As he approached the town square, he saw a large, fancy sign telling people of the great launch of the sailing ship Stoner. So Thomas headed to the public dock, carrying a large pack on his back. When he arrived, he saw a very fancy ship, 50 feet long, and decorated with all sorts of carvings inlaid with the finest gold, and people had lined up to get a tour of this fine boat, but they found out that Stone was charging a great deal of money for that privilege. So there were some really unhappy murmurs in the crowd, and not very many people touring the boat. "Aha!" Stone cried when he spotted Thomas. He pointed to him and shouted, There's my opponent now. Here is my work. Where's your ship?" By the time all had heard the wager, and they were very interested to learn where Thomas had gone and what he'd created, and everyone was tired of Stone's constant boasting and stingy ways. Many were very disappointed to see that Thomas hadn't arrived by land and not by sea on a fine ship. All eyes turned to Thomas. Thomas shrugged. "It's done." A new wave of shock surged through the crowd. "Oh, perhaps it's too big to fit into the harbor," shouted one man. "Yeah, maybe it's invisible," shouted another man. Thomas smiled. "If you want to see what I've made, just follow me," Thomas called. As one, the crowd turned from the dock and the fancy ship and followed Thomas through the town and off to a large pond beside the old mill. Thomas stopped by the pond and carefully placed his sack on the ground. He stood and called out, "Will all the children please come forward to join me?" The children all rushed to his side. He dug into his pack and began passing out little wooden pipe whistles to each child. When that was done, he began to unwrap the largest, most beautiful toy ship ever seen. Everyone gasped. The children sent up a cheer. On the deck of the perfect model stood tiny people and tiny supplies. Each little line and winch worked exactly like a real ship. The little red sails furled up and down, and all of the lines worked. "That's it," said Stone. "You built a model ship? You lose." Thomas was a patient man, and he reminded Stone the bet was not to make the largest ship. The bet was to make one so fine that people would sing its praises and it would always be remembered. Suddenly Stone was silent, and he began to suspect that Thomas had not been on the losing end of this wager after all. Then Thomas announced to the children, "I need you all to pipe 3 times to call out the crew." The children blew on their little pipes. No sound seemed to come out, but immediately the mice all scurried out of the bag, up the little gangplank and onto the ship. Thomas lifted the ship and gently placed it in the water. "Pipe twice more," Thomas said, and the children did. Again, there was no sound that they could hear, but the little crew snapped to and began to tug the lines and move the rudder about until the sails billowed out and the tiny ship set sail. Now the whole town cheered. The children laughed and ran around the pond to keep a close eye on this new marvel. The mayor of the town came up to Thomas and patted him on the back. "That is the finest little ship I ever did see. And what's her name?" Thomas slanted a look at Stone. "I've named her the Dreamer." "Then I do declare that the Dreamer is the winner of this contest of skill and wit," the mayor announced to the town. Stone walked over to Thomas and shook his hand. "I can see I have a lot to learn," he said, "from you and your mice." And so it was that Stone spent a humble year working with Thomas, building little ships, carving simple bowls, and charging a reasonable price. When it was done, he thanked Thomas and left to start a new woodworking shop in another town. In his shop hung a sign that he and Thomas had made together, and it read, "Fine ships made to order. No job too small." Well, that was a slightly fraught reading, but thank you all for getting through it with me. As you can tell, I'm still not 100% here, but I'm going to go with Passover tonight and hope that the hand sanitizer I've put around my door is going to keep the shadow away. Love you all. Good night.